Well, everybody died, but yet they're still alive, as death doesn't exist. So the nuclear explosion from Chainsaw Man Chapter 221 pretty much left everybody immensely suffering and incredible amounts of pain, and they can't die and they're suffering because death doesn't exist, but they're also not recovering, so they're just staying in a state of constant pain. That's how Chapter 221 ended and how Chapter 222 began. Last chapter was pretty much the fight between Denji and Yoru, or I should say Pochita and Yoru ended the chapter with a nuclear punch, which I guess was equivalent to a nuclear explosion. It's kind of hard to say if it was actually that powerful, but it was no doubt extremely powerful. And Chapter 222 is the aftermath of this nuclear explosion. It was extremely powerful because we see that Yoru was completely obliterated herself down to what looks like just her skull. There's actually a couple panels illustrated here showing her completely regenerating. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's due to there not being death in this universe right now, or it's because she has incredible regenerative capabilities. Because we don't see other people regenerating, and that was one thing I was asking. If death doesn't exist in the Chainsaw Man universe right now, if you receive a deadly wound, does it heal, or do you just keep the wound and you don't die? Well, all the ordinary humans, and even Denji himself, don't regenerate. They remain injured, so I think this one is due to Yoru just being really OP in terms of how much healing she has. We see skulls, charred bodies, people on fire or extremely burned. We even see one woman who has part of her brain showing even and bleeding with a bunch of like wooden spikes through her almost. And they're all talking in like in extreme pain and showing that. Like one person is literally burning alive, but they're not dying. One person is burned and just asking for water. There's like immense destruction, but nobody can die. Because this person that has like their chest pierced and their stomach pierced, this woman has her brain showing, she should be dead, but she's not dying, and she's even like saying Chainsaw Man. Because Pochita himself has also been almost completely obliterated down to just his upper body, his skull, showing how powerful that nuclear punch from last chapter really was. And Yoru pretty much rejoices in this because she actually starts to cry. Now, at first I thought she was crying because she was sad for the destruction that she caused, or that was Asa leaking through, but I was mistaken because she was actually like rejoicing and crying tears of joy at how much destruction and suffering she's causing. She pretty much says that a lot of people are suffering and are hurt because of her power, and the fact that they can't die and will never be released from that pain, and will stay in a constant state of suffering because they're not being death, is a dream come true for her and like an ideal world for her. So yeah, she's completely unhinged at this point, and this kind of goes deeper into how Asa said that she thought that they could be friends, and how she was incredibly mistaken because at the end of the day, Yoru was the war devil who enjoys killing others and causing immense amounts of destruction, which is the exact opposite of Asa, and that's just further insight to their dynamic. Asa wanted to make things work with Yoru, for them to be friends, but their differences are just too much, and Asa knows that she has to stop Yoru from causing any more destruction. These are pretty much irreconcilable differences. If Yoru is going to be stopped, she's most likely going to have to be completely defeated or subdued in some manner, but she just won't willingly like see the difference or see the error in her ways. As I mentioned earlier, that woman that was like bleeding from her brain and like impaled almost, she's saying Chainsaw Man and like goes up to him and like pours blood into his mouth and says, "Save us." And I guess this somewhat regenerates Pochita or Denji. But anyways, Yoru then kicks off her head and she still doesn't die even though she's been decapitated. And it's pretty much the point that Yoru's been waiting for, so she can turn Chainsaw Man into a weapon of her own, saying that she feels like she's won. But she essentially has won at this point because Chainsaw Man is down for the count. And then when she goes to turn Pochita into a weapon, we see that Denji is conscious and actually active in there. And I don't know if that's because the blood he just received personally regenerated him, but he throws up a scissors sign, like from rock, paper, scissors, because Yoru was holding out her hand in a way that resembled paper. And Denji yells, "Yoru, I win," as in he threw scissors versus her throwing paper, and confused her for a second and made her perceive it as that she lost the game of rock, paper, scissors. And then, after realizing that, she tries to turn into a weapon and she can't. So Denji kind of outsmarted her in some kind of goofy way by making her think she lost rock, paper, scissors instead of winning the actual fight they just had, and thus she can't turn Chainsaw Man into a weapon. So this was a clever way to make Yoru perceive herself as having lost to him, even though just moments prior she was confident in her victory. So if he hadn't thrown that at that scissor sign at just the right moment, then Denji and Pochita would have been turned into a weapon for sure. And then something interesting happens where Denji says that Pochita's devil powers and himself have essentially combined. And I don't know if that Denji has turned into Pochita or gained control of Pochita's devil form, like his consciousness is now running it, or if they've merged somehow. Because the chapter ends showing like Chainsaw Man, like more looking like Pochita, but it's Denji actively talking, because we don't usually see Pochita talk when he's in control, but now we see Denji talking while looking in a form that looks more like Pochita, though it looks kind of like a hybrid because it looks different than normal. So I don't know if this is like a more powerful form or what led to these circumstances, so maybe we'll find out more about what exactly led to that. One thing we clearly know is that Denji's hybrid devil form is much weaker than Pochita's true Chainsaw Man devil form, and it's a huge distinct difference in power. So will this potential like some somewhat hybrid form where Denji is more in control with his consciousness, with Pochita's Chainsaw Man devil look? Will that lead to him being more powerful? Will it be weaker or somewhere in between? That's kind of what I'm curious to see. Usually things like this usually lead to like a power-up, but it's kind of hard to say because Pochita was already like one of the strongest levels there is, so can he really get any stronger than he already was just because Denji's consciousness is in control? That I don't really know. That's where the chapter ends, is pretty much Yoru trying to turn Denji into a weapon, and he like regenerates and says that him and Pochita's powers have combined, and we see like this new little hybrid form that they have going on. That's where the chapter ends. So I guess next chapter, the fight will continue. The end of this arc feels really close at hand, so I would say we only have a few chapters left of the fighting, so I'm interested to see where it goes. What did you think of Chainsaw Man chapter 222? It was another short, quick-paced chapter, only 14 pages. Not a ton happened other than just the aftermath of the nuclear explosion and Denji regenerating, and we seeing the aftermath of what a world without death looks like. Let me know how you liked it down in the comments below. My name has been Champizard. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.